because people don't understand to a large, it's a big chess game at a very high level. It's a very high level chess, the highest. And I'm dealing with very smart players. These are smart people. They don't get there. And as soon as that war's over, which will be soon, your prices are going to drop like a rock. You watch. I've been very good at predicting. You know, all my life I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. When will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I can do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth?
Welcome, new Templars. I'm Dylan Lewis Monroe, aka 𝕯𝖚𝖚 the Mapmaker. It's been 2 weeks since I made a video, so we have a lot to report on. I'm going to walk you guys through a timeline, essentially, of the key events over the past 2 weeks, and also look at some interpretations from other people on Twitter, as well as my own interpretations, as well as my position on this war. I just realized my light's not on yet, so let's see if this blows me out. That's a little better. So yeah, it's this Iran war is kind of a sticky situation, because it's like you're kind of like damned if you support it, or like a liberal if you don't support it. You're a neocon if you support it, or you're a libtard if you don't. But there is a middle ground of kind of the 40,000 foot view. And I've even heard people in the truth movement talking about, oh, like Trump supporters, MAGA people, like now they've just totally turned into warmongers. This is from like Mike King saying this, who actually, you know, he supports this, but on the premise that it's all fake. But, you know, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And me personally, like I see everyone's perspective. People that are anti-war, it's like, I get it. People that are pro-war, I get it too. And, you know, in a way, I feel kind of like people back in the Iraq war when they were like, well, I trust Bush to make the decision. And like, I'm just kind of being like, well, yeah, I trust Trump to make the decision. But the thing is, like, we're dealing with a different administration here. This is Trump. This is the White Hats. This is like not the same cabal as it was before, that we have so much evidence of in a lot of different ways. And of course, you know, there's the MAGA turncoats that are saying that we're working for Israel. Well, so my primary interpretation this week, I've given you guys sort of my main thesis the past 2 weeks of my own rationale and justification for this war. And, you know, it's not like I'm defending it necessarily. Like, I'm observing it and I'm interpreting what's happening. It's like I haven't necessarily had a choice in it. None of us have had all the data at our disposal of, you know, the true reasons why this is happening. I think we can assume that it's not the reasons being presented on the surface. Like I said, the first week this could go into exopolitics, extraterrestrials. What was my main thesis last week? I'm not sure, but this week, the realization I've really come to, as we've seen Israel getting hit harder and harder throughout this is the most simple explanation at this point. We all wanted to see Israel get hit after we saw what they did to Gaza, after understanding how they've corrupted our own country through AIPAC, what their representatives did through COVID and the vaccine programs. We all wanted to see Israel go down. Well, what is happening right now? They're getting hit harder than ever before, maybe only comparable to how they were hit 6 months ago. But I would say, I think it's going beyond that at this point. And remember, they do have laws prohibiting showing what's actually going on there. And so, once again, it's quite hard to know exactly what's going on. One moment, my mouse has frozen here. There we go. That has never happened before. Either way, they're getting hit hard. You know, we are seeing video footage coming out showing widespread destruction. And so this would be vindication for Gaza for all the crimes that they've done throughout their history, from the Nakba till today. Even myself, being one quarter either Lebanese or Syrian, we're not really sure because I didn't know my grandfather on that side at all. But I do have one quarter of something in that region. He was a Christian from that region, a white Christian, so I'm not Arab. But it's not even like, has nothing to do with my personal ancestry or like which side I'm on. I even support aspects of Israeli culture more than aspects of these countries governed by Sharia law or even like predominantly Muslim. But what I don't agree with is slaughtering civilians, forcing people from their homes at gunpoint, having prisons for children. A lot of things Israel does, I certainly do not support. So it is actually good to see them receiving some blowback for what they've done in the past and their overambition of trying to take out Iran. Maybe the USA, we couldn't blow them up ourselves for political reasons, but now our actions in apparently supporting them in this operation have led to them getting blown up at this point. So you're welcome. A great example of keeping our enemies close. And I wouldn't even necessarily call that 5D chess. I mean, this is fairly 3D chess of saying, yeah, we'll go into Iran with you, but oh, that's too bad. You got totally wrecked, your country in the process. Now, we still have no news, official news at least, if Bibi Netanyahu is dead, at least. I mean, the official news is that he's alive. However, you know, we have continued speculation about AI videos of his death or of, you know, AI videos claiming he's still alive, but he's not. And Trump has been somewhat mute on the subject. I mean, he hasn't said anything about Bibi being dead. But as we'll see in some of the other interpretations I have here to bring up, some people are saying that essentially in a lot of ways when Trump is talking about Iran, he may actually be in a cryptic doublespeak way actually referring to Israel as well, as if Iran and Israel were sort of combined a uniparty representing the old guard, the deep state, the 13 families. And so we'll read a little bit some of those interpretations. And I think I have one here that I wanted to read first off that I really like. A lot of things coming out of this account called DOQ Holiday with 2 L's on X. And that's exactly what he's saying here is Iran equals Israel. Look at what Trump has been saying and read between the lines. It's completely owned by the entities that control Israel. Trump caught on to their game a long time ago. There's a reason why Netanyahu made Iran into the boogeyman 30 years ago. There's a reason why Iran is trying to assassinate Trump. There's a reason why the U.S. Secret Service made massive mistakes. There's a reason why Rockefeller Morgan Group collapsed the financial system by Iran in 1979 and took over the country. There's a reason why the U.S. is totally silent about Netanyahu in the past week plus. There's a reason why we are seeing fake AI videos, Invisible Enemy. That was from March 17th. So quite interesting interpretation there, I would say. And we're going to look at several more interpretations from different accounts throughout the video. But to start a little bit on this timeline of what has occurred in the past 2 weeks, in my previous video, I was mentioning that we were just starting to talk about Karg Island, the critical oil junction in the Middle East. And just the day after my last video is when the US struck Karg Island, military targets, mind you. The US is primarily, thus far, targeting military strategic targets and not the actual energy infrastructure. If we destroyed the energy infrastructure on Karg Island, that may cause the global economy to collapse because so much of the resources used by other countries, specifically in Asia, relies on these exports from Iran through Karg Island. And so it was on March 13th that we did the big strike on Karg Island. And on March 14th, a drone crashed into the U.S. Embassy in Dubai. Now, of course, this is like what we're hearing. What's really happening on the ground, who actually knows? It's like I haven't heard anything. I haven't followed a few accounts from Iran, and I literally haven't heard anything from any of them since this started. There's a lot of influencers and such in places like Dubai that are giving us somewhat more reliable reports on, if there's an explosion in the city or not. We've seen definitely a fire at the airport, a fire at some gas storage facilities in all these different Middle East countries. But in general, like what's actually going on in Iran, we see a video of an explosion, and we're left to Twitter to try to figure out if it's true or not. But we'll just go through this and not assume what we read is true, but assume like this is what's being reported. I think it's really important to separate what you're reading, what's being reported, from what's actually happening. As I learned from January 6th myself, being at one of these historic events in person, what happens on the ground can be very, very different from what is reported. Now, in the case of something being blown up, that's a little more cut and dry. But even in those situations, there's room for exaggeration, misinterpretation. And so, we'll go with the reports for now, but just we'll keep in mind that any of this could be potentially simulation or just happening a little bit differently than how it's being reported. On 3/16 was Trump's crazy presser, I'm calling it. We can actually get rid of this for now until we're ready to read the next interpretation here. But I played most of the critical clips from the past 2 weeks in the beginning of this video. Trump had some serious zingers in his press conferences last week. The 5D chess one was obviously pretty interesting. A reference to a lot of the Q posts and obviously all the Anons talking about 5D chess, and the fairly hilarious statement that unfortunately wasn't included in the clip I put in the intro to this video, but he followed saying that the high IQ people he's dealing with in Iran, like these are not Jasmine Crockett's, which I thought that was pretty funny. And it was in that same presser that he made the statement about Cuba, saying it will be my honor to take Cuba. I'll do anything I want with it, to be honest. So that's a pretty strong statement. By take Cuba, what does he mean? I'm assuming he means some form of regime change, possibly making it into a U.S. territory, the way Puerto Rico is. I doubt it would be a full U.S. state. But that seems to be, he's talking about it very seriously. And so he's also now, later in this 2-week span, we're talking about Iran is dead, the Iran war is ending. And so it would seem, based on that one statement, there hasn't been too much follow-up, but that Cuba might be next on the chopping block. And so, Trump is systematically going through all of these rogue states, which you could also consider deep state strongholds, or possibly also CIA operational points or operational zones that have been, and maybe in some ways holding the world hostage for many years. Here's the thing. Let's just cut to the chase here. If Trump ran on a platform of I'm going to take over the world, that wouldn't have probably flown with anyone. But I think secretly in a lot of our MAGA hearts, maybe we wouldn't even like to admit it before this election, but in our hearts, we know how evil the deep state is, how entrenched they are. And I mean, I've said this before, that even though we want to be America first, and even a lot of us in the MAGA may have some feelings of wanting to be isolationist, in reality, this world is interconnected. And for us to be safe at home, Trump has to eliminate the deep state wherever it may be. And I think a lot of the deep state at home maybe already has been eliminated, even though it hasn't been publicly disclosed. We're talking about the arrest of like the Obama administration and such. all of the deep state players, also in the corporate world. But I think that the deep state has had these little like alcoves, these little safe havens in these exact same states that we're talking about: Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, Colombia, and maybe even others. Maybe even there's a deep state element in China, although I do believe that Trump is working with Z. China may be dealing with its own little operations that may lead to the Taiwan situation eventually. And so, in a way, Trump is establishing like the MAGA world order by eliminating these terrorist threats that are ultimately controlled by the deep state. Because, everyone was afraid of the new world order like coming in and being officiated. But in reality, we really already were in the new world order. We had the UN. Ever since Iran had built its parliament that resembled the Illuminati pyramid with 32 windows, it's been clear. US overthrew Iran in the 50s, and then this Ayatollah Islamic Sharia law regime came in the 70s. In history books, that would seem like a change in the administration. However, in the world of secret societies, I would think that in a lot of ways that was even solidifying Iran even more as like a rogue terrorist state that was going to be used to terrorize the world into going into the new world order. And so these things must be done. Now, that was also on 3/16 was the same day the Dubai airport was hit by an Iran drone missile strike. And like, that's one of the type of events that is very public. A lot of people see it. And so there definitely is blowback happening in our Middle East allies that is being well documented by a lot of people there. But now, how extensive is the damage is not like that bad. Like, what did the drone at the Iran or at the Dubai airport actually hit? I'm not sure exactly. Like, if it just made a fire, if it hit something that's going to be like take a really long time to repair or not, or if it hit like a fuel tank. But either way, it's not like Iran's like carpet bombing these people, but they are using somewhat of terrorist tactics of attacking countries that aren't the ones attacking them. And it's even inviting more of these Middle Eastern countries to get involved militarily and aggravating the old ancient feud between Sunni and Shiite Muslims, because all these Gulf states are Sunni and Iran is Shiite. And it really seems like that Shiite branch of Islam is the one that's more promoting the radical form of jihad that's really the big part of the problem in our whole world and in international security. So 3/17 was St. Patrick's Day. The whole administration came out wearing green ties to meet with the Prime Minister of Ireland. So a lot of people in the Q movement interpret that as green light, green equals go. That's a little bit of a stretch considering it's St. Patrick's Day. But you saw a couple of the statements he made in the opening of this video. That's when he started talking about like the Iran war is winding down very soon. So we're 1 week past that now. And 10 days past that now. 17th is obviously an important Q day of the month. And, he's still kind of saying it's over. Now, I've got to remember when George W. Bush went on the aircraft carrier 2 weeks into the Iraq war with the big mission accomplished banner behind him. So we do have a history of presidents claiming wars are won very early on when, they may go on for another 10 years or so. But I don't think that this is one of those situations. Now, in an interesting turn in the narrative, on that same day, Wednesday, the 17th, Joe Kent, the counterterrorism director, resigned with a very nasty public letter that he published saying that he won't go to war for Israel. From what I've heard, Joe Kent he's not a lifelong Republican. He was more of a Bernie boy, is what I've heard. And then immediately after resigning, he went on Tucker Carlson's podcast to go into more depth about how he's saying essentially Trump is controlled by Israel. Now, I think that this could definitely be part of the White Hat's narrative deployment, part of drumming up this narrative that Trump is controlled by Israel, which is essentially raising public awareness of Israeli involvement in U.S. politics, which has been the standard fare and totally off the table for discussion for the past 50 years since Israel's creation. And so even though it looks like traitors among the midst of this administration and turncoats, I think this is ultimately serving the goal of raising public awareness about Israel for hopefully, a switch in our greatest ally coming eventually, or maybe a switch in the administration of Israel coming. And a lot of the other things that have been happening in the Middle East that are being blamed on Iran or being blamed on accidents, secretly people are thinking and, speculating that Israel might be behind some of these things, such as the American refueling plane that went down, such as a lot of the hits on the Gulf states that are being blamed on Iran. People have been noting that sometimes like the drones or missiles that are coming in are actually coming from the direction of Israel and not the direction of Iran. And so I think Israel is up to its typical false flags. And actually, we have already started to see a little bit more friction between Trump's agenda in all of this and Israel's. And we'll get to that in a couple of days further down this timeline here that we're going through. Now, I want to jump back here to another sort of interpretation here from Mr. Poole, who's putting out some interesting deep level interpretation of this conflict. From March 17th, he's saying, they told you it was a war on Iran. They lied. Israel is invading Lebanon. Iran is firing on UAE. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Trump is threatening to abandon NATO. This isn't a war. This is a global realignment. They are not separate conflicts. They are dominoes falling in line. A controlled demolition of the old world order to make way for the new one. Now this says, I don't know where he gets this date, but April 22nd, 2026, the day the map is redrawn. So that's very interesting, I would say. And I did want to mention Israel's attacking on Lebanon. Israel essentially using this Iran war as a smokescreen to just invade their neighbors and expand their northern border into parts of Lebanon that have been always Lebanon for hundreds of years. And so that just shows you that for Israel, this war is not just about safety and protection and enduring as they exist with their current borders. It's all about the greater state of Israel and expansion and Israel's own imperialism. And as I played in that unbelievable AI Bibi Netanyahu video of last week, that wanting to become a superpower of the Middle East and a superpower of the world, which I don't think anyone wants, and that's not the way to do it either. It's one thing when America clears out Copper Age natives, but it's another when you're clearing out, Lebanon, Gaza. Yeah. So 3/18, a very suspicious power outage in the Denver airport. But ultimately, the power was only out for a couple of hours. But even still, with what we know about what goes on under the Denver airport, connections to deep underground military bases, I'd say that was a prime possibility that there was some black ops happening there in relation to DUMS and the deep state, and some clearing out happening in Denver, which, that whole state, Colorado, is pretty much the hub of the military-industrial complex. One of the hubs of the military-industrial complex, and also connected to Mount Cheyenne, which is where some of us think the true Trump may have been hiding ever since the national emergency declaration in 2020. Not hiding, but bunkered up for, world war against the deep state. Now, that same day, 3/18, was when things really started escalating and tensions started rising with Israel and the United States and Iran when Israel blew up liquid natural gas fields that are known as the South Pars gas field. Now, a lot of news reported that as in Iran. However, that exact gas field is actually in the ocean, or the sea. What do you call that sea? The sea in between Iran and the Gulf states. So I think it's like about, well, you can't really see my cursor, can you? Anyways, that field is jointly drilled by Qatar. And so to be attacking, it also provides, let's see here, a good portion of the entire world's natural gas. And so, we don't want to blow up the entire gas field. It's not even exclusively owned and mined by Iran. So this was very reckless of Israel, and Trump put out a very long tweet talking about, like, in Israel's anger, they blew up this field. And he's saying that do not do it again, essentially. Trump was pissed. In retaliation, Iran struck 2 refineries in Riyadh, who was not even, it's an asymmetric retaliation because Saudi Arabia was not responsible for Israel's attack on the South Pars gas field. Also, Ras Laff, an oil refinery in Qatar, was attacked in retaliation by Iranian missile strike. And now again, these are the reports saying by Iranian missile strike. It's certainly possible that Israel could have blown up the South Pars gas field and blown up Ras Laff, an oil refinery in Qatar, and refineries in Riyadh, all to stir the pot here and maybe try to pull the Gulf states into the war, try to get the Gulf states to attack Iran directly. And so this is, another one of these situations where, we read the news, we read what has been blown up, but it's not always clear if it's a false flag or if it's an attack done by Iran. Either way, Trump was pissed. He said he will blow up the whole South Pars field, which is the biggest natural gas field in the world, if Iran hits Qatar again. So it was seeming very much like a little bit theater. And these are all statements that are being put out on social media. I have a new phrase that I'm calling truth tweet ultimatum warfare, which seems to be the new standard in warfare during this Trump administration. And, this didn't used to be exactly how it worked. I guess, in the past, you'd put out like a public statement in a video that would be played on the news, but now it's like, it's much more rapid, it's much more real time. And, you're really seeing like the exchange between these parties, like in real time on Twitter, which is it really, or is it a little more theatrics? I'm not sure, but either way, Trump, posted as if he was very unhappy with the way this was escalating with the attacks on energy infrastructure in the Gulf, and essentially was saying that he would go scorched earth on the entire South Pars gas field if Iran attacked energy infrastructure on the Gulf states again. So I made this meme of Trump's, sorry about that. I have the doors open to let a little breeze in it. And so I'm hearing some strange sounds, but I think it's just paper moving from the wind. I have a cross breeze here, which is kind of nice. I made this meme saying, if it doesn't go your way, just blow up everything. Don Zoo. Because what he said was a little bit psycho. He was literally saying, I will blow up the entire field if Iran hits Qatar again, which is like, daddy saying, like, I'm going to throw all the toys in the trash if the kids hit each other again. But we're talking about literally the world's natural gas supply. So it's a little bit, it's so insane that, it has to be somewhat theater. Like, because if Trump really did that, like, I don't think he would be remembered in a positive light, to be honest. So after that, the next day, 3/19, Thursday last week, there was the meeting between Trump and the Japanese prime minister, who's a big supporter of Trump. and even acts like a little bit of a fangirl around him. And we got this great meme of JD Vance, which really doesn't have too much to do with the video, but it was just so funny that I wanted to include it. Now, that same day, there was reports that one of our F-35 fighters was shot in the air and had to make an emergency landing. So it was not destroyed, but it was hit and had to make an emergency landing. And the rumor was that that happened because it was visible on infrared, as if this $35 billion project failed to consider like some sort of like primitive form of radar or infrared system. And so that was going around on Twitter, you know, with the doom and gloomers saying our F-35 is worthless now, like it could be shot down by Iran, and now China's learning that all I need to do is look in infrared. But I was looking into this a little bit, you know, asking Grok and AI, what type of cloaking or, you know, stealth abilities is this plane supposed to have versus like, is it supposed to be visible on infrared? So technically, you know, its main stealth is related to radar. And we've always known that it has some infrared visibility because all aircraft produce significant heat. And so essentially, you know, what it was saying was that these claims like the plane is like no longer stealth or is like they've been built it wrong is quite exaggerated. You know, this is still one of the best aircraft in the world. In short, the F-35 is stealthy against radar, its primary threat for long-range engagements, but infrared detection remains a challenge for all jets, including fifth-generation ones. Posts claiming that it's not stealthy at all or fully exposed are often overstate the dramatic effect. Overstated for dramatic effect, while those saying it is immune to infrared are also wrong. Real-world effectiveness depends on distance, aspect, conditions, and sensor quality. And lastly, last week, there was missile debris that landed actually on Temple Mount. So by calling that missile debris, I suppose that was maybe a missile that was intercepted in the air by Israel's defense systems. But either way, it's very, well, it's not that concerning for me personally, but it would be monumental for at least two of the world religions, Islam and Judaism, if anything hits Temple Mount. You know, if the Wailing Wall is destroyed, if Al-Aqsa Mosque is destroyed, if the Dome of the Rock is hit, would be a very big deal. And so, you know, the fact that there is missile parts landing willy-nilly on Temple Mount has very profound spiritual implications. And so it would be interesting to see if that site survives this war, if things are already falling on it, but not necessarily being targeted on it. I certainly doubt Iran would target the Dome of the Rock or Al-Aqsa Mosque, but I know what's stopping Israel from blowing it up and saying that Iran did it. That's a good question, because that is the spot where Israel and all the Zionists want to build the third temple to usher in the events of the apocalypse. So that was it for last week. And before we get to this week and the weekend, which actually there was some serious escalations over the weekend as well in the Truth Tweet Ultimatum warfare, want to do a quick little promo for Deep State Mapping Project, dsmp.io, the store that keeps the new Templars running. I have been listing a lot of new crystals just recently. I've gone into my personal collection. Since I did not go to Tucson this year, I'm sacrificing a significant portion of my personal collection to list it in the store. And so those will be labeled as selected from the personal collection of Dylan Lewis Monroe, the map maker. So you'll see which ones those are as the final line of the description. Also a reminder, we have the new D.S.M.P gallery section, which has one-of-a-kind, hand-painted fluid acrylic originals. We have 10 new pieces spanning all of our different infographics. Some of the crystals have also been listed in a new sculpture section, which we'll be expanding more in the future as well. Our latest infographic is the Sovereignty Certificate, which the one you see here is actually the newest edition that I just put in this frame yesterday. These are still being printed on demand as of now. However, I have reordered the bulk prints of this. And once we get the bulk prints in, we'll be shipping it from our headquarters here in Ohio, and it will include the compendium packet, which expands on the information in the infographic itself. The poster has some very good information, but it was more about the aesthetic than trying to cram everything in there and have it just look like a big old Excel chart. So when we ship the poster, it is going to come with a big printed Excel chart with even more information and sovereignty strategies. Also this week, I've been working on designing a new folder for all of our different packets to come in. Our folder is kind of a big deal here at D.S.M.P. since packets, along with our posters, are some of the main products we sell. However, for custom posters, they have very high for custom folders rather, they have very high minimums. And so we have to get like 1,000 folders at a time. So I would like to have a different folder for each different packet we sell, like one for, well, we have different folders, but they're not all custom printed. But we have essentially one custom printed folder. Then we create some other custom folders with stamps on more basic folders. But essentially, we are retiring our energy map folder, which has served us very well for the past 3 years. And going forward for hopefully the next 1 year, if we sell all 1,000 very quickly, we'll be having a new Jesara themed folder. So we're going to print this one, the Jesara, on the exterior of the folder, which all our different packets, most of our different packets will come in. So that is ordered as well. I've also updated the Jesara map. It was actually the biggest update the Jesara map has gotten since its creation in 2022. We've added some new community resources to find out information about Jesara, and we've added some more altcoins and expanded the ISO 20022 coins that are listed there. A couple other tiny little changes, but for the most part, the Jesara plan has remained very consistent. As you see, I'm wearing the Jesara shirt today as well. But the Jesara download has become a paid download if you want the newest version of Jesara. We also are created and are offering with the download the first black and white printer-friendly version of the Jesara map. So ever since its creation, the Jesara map has been in this purple, orange, and teal colorway. And for the first time, if you buy the new Jesara download, you'll have a black and white version that you can print on white paper. That's not, we call this bleed to edge. It's no longer bleed to edge, so it fits all in one piece of paper. And so that's new. And other than that, I just want to mention, we have all these posters in stock. You see behind me the World Hierarchy Pyramid. And the one I really would like people to get into more, that I think I might want to do a few more videos explaining in the near future, is the deity chart. Especially with Temple Mount being hit with missiles, it's like to understand the history of religion and theology on this planet, I think will allow people to get that 40,000 foot view. And hell, it could end the conflict between Sunni and Shiite. It could end the conflict between Jews and Muslims. It could end the conflict between Christians and Muslims if people could just expand their minds and understand comparative theology a little bit better. So with that said, check out this 60-second promo of everything we offer at dsmp.io.
Truth seekers, are you ready to uncover the secrets they don't want you to know? At dsmp.io, we're not just a store. We're a portal to the unknown. Prints and posters that unveil hidden truths, from ancient mysteries to modern cover-ups. Fill your space with tapestries woven with cosmic secrets. Tap into the energy of hand-selected crystals to awaken your mind. Explore exclusive packets packed with forbidden knowledge. Cleanse your body and spirit with products designed to strip away the toxins of a corrupted world. In the chaos of today, we give you the tools to stay sharp and to stay awakened. This is more than shopping. This is a movement. Step through the portal. Discover the truth. dsmp.io. Truth disguised as art.
There you go, dsmp.io. And that also just reminded me, in the body section, we have restocked our Miracle Healing Gels, which is really the one health and body product that we stock in-house and ship directly. It's not an affiliate product. It's made by local veterans, and it's a really amazing aloe-based gel with a very high concentration of colloidal silver that's really great for any kind of topical issue you may have. It could be a substitute for like Neosporin, or it could be good for like, I put it on my eczema when I have eczema. Any type of topical issue, burns, wounds, cuts, even insect bites, Miracle Healing Gel works amazing. So you'll definitely see that in our body section at dsmp.io. So moving on to the news of the weekends, which is, I labeled here escalations. It was already a fairly big escalation with, Trump's scorched earth statement about the South Pars gas field. But the tensions seem to continue through Saturday. So, okay, looks like I did some voice to text here, because we have the Strait of Hormuz in voice to text is interpreted as horror moves by Apple. And so I found that a little bit interesting that, think about it, the Strait of Hormuz, it does sound a lot like horror moves, and like, strange the world was set up this way. So this is when the threats started coming strong and heavy from Trump about unblock the Strait of Hormuz, or the USA will blow up your power plants in Iran, starting with the biggest one. Iran replied in turn to that, stating that they would blow up the power grid in the mainland USA if the USA blew up their biggest power plant. And then Trump replied saying that if Iran bombed the desalination plants in the Middle East, that would be considered a weapon of mass destruction, because millions of people in the Middle East would be without drinkable, usable drinking water. And Trump said that he would respond then with weapons of mass destruction if desalination plants were hit by Iran in the Middle East. So let's see, this goes a little bit out of order here, but late on Sunday night, it was already being reported that the USA had taken out the electrical grid in Iran. However, after I went to bed and woke up Monday afternoon, it was being reported that Trump was saying that we're in productive talks with Iran and have put a pause on bombing the energy facilities for 5 days. And so that's a perfect example of how, these stories have been changing so rapidly that, you go to bed and, we're going into World War III, you wake up and World War III is postponed. And so I guess that's a good thing. Tempered use of force is always a good thing. However, on Sunday, Trump also tweeted, and we have, oh, actually, I forgot to pull this up. Here we go. I'm not sure what day that this picture was posted, but I think it was probably around Saturday when the White House started getting pretty serious, talking about like no games. We're seriously threatening weapons of mass destruction, and Iran's making, trying to make their equivalent threats, which are kind of falling flat. And of course, I also wonder, like, is this all some kind of a theater? Is this for real? Like this truth tweet ultimatum warfare. On Sunday, however, we got this tweet from Trump saying that now, with the death of Iran, the greatest enemy America has is the radical left, highly incompetent Democrat Party. Thank you for attention. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So, in general, even though we're at the stage of threatening weapons of mass destruction in Iran, Trump is already moving on to the next, which, you know, other than Cuba, will be the Democrat Party. And, you know, this is all everyone in this movement, in the Q movement, the Truth movement, is very much expecting, you know, this to eventually come to the big O, the big Obama, the big HRC, Brennan, Clapper, and to see some public arrests in the homeland and finally on the mainstream media. And this is exactly what he's referring to here. So we're getting a lot of breadcrumbs in that regards. And even the cryptic post from today that I'm going to discuss at the end here may be suggestive of something like that as well. Because certainly, like, Cuba is not going to be the end stage of all of this. You know, Cuba will probably be another block on the chopping block eventually, but it's not going to be the big enchilada, the fat lady singing at the end. That will be the witch, HRC. And there's also another tweet from Trump this week in which the word witch, WHICH, he spelled very obviously an intentional typo as WITCH, which didn't really have much context, but we know that this is ultimately a battle between witches and warlocks. And so when Trump drops a witch spelled like the wicked witch in a tweet, that's signaling that he is very much aware of that aspect of this battle with the deep state. So I think we have here another good interpretation. I wasn't sure where to insert these interpretations from other people throughout the video, but we're just going to kind of sprinkle them in sporadically here. So this is an account called Kill AU Deep State, a man named Russell McGregor, that I really liked this interpretation that he offered here. This is kind of like a high-level interpretation of this whole conflict and the whole, you know, deep state war, what's really going on. He tweets, "I'm going to make this very clear because many simply do not have the knowledge to understand what is happening. 1. President Trump and the U.S. military, NSA, submitted Israel years ago. 2. Trump, Putin, and Z are working together to rid the world of the deep state. 3. The Rothschilds are already defeated. 4. Israel and Zionism are being publicly exposed to the world for their crimes. It's a cornerstone of the plan. 5. The Israel-Iran war is fake. It's a psychological operation to wake up the masses, especially the leftists and Christian Zionists. 6. President Trump will enact long-lasting peace in the Middle East and deport non-integrators back. This will also save Europe. 7. Psychopathic Zionist American neocon foreign policy is now being shown to the world. This is the only way refractory ideologies can learn. 8. President Trump is also using the war as a method to bring in a new financial system. Jasara, baby, you know it. We've been talking about that for a long time. 9. President Trump is testing the loyalty of allies who are trying to protect the city of London and the rules-based order. 10. President Trump will reverse course on Iran and cement permanent peace treaties in the Middle East. The Greater Israel Project will be dead. I would say it's already dead. 11. D-Class will expose all those who doubted President Trump. 12. Importantly, elite crimes against children and the Zionist pedophilic blackmail industry will be laid bare as the enforcement arm of American foreign policy. So I think that's a very good high-level 40,000-foot interpretation of all that is going on. Now let's see, is this out of order? This is a little bit of a side note, a little culture news was, what's his name? Brian, the longevity influencer. His full name escapes me right now, but I'm sure a lot of you guys know him. Brian is first name, I believe. He did a publicly live streamed DMT ceremony and is now claiming that DMT is a longevity remedy, along with psilocybin, longevity for your brain as well as for your body. And so to me, this is a positive development. Seeing DMT specifically, as well as other psychoactives becoming more mainstream, I think could really help people, could help the world in the spiritual department. According to him, it could also help with longevity, which I'm very much into longevity remedies, as you guys have seen from my healing web, my infinite life vortex. But, the more we mainstream some of these psychedelic substances, I think the more healing humanity will do, because this could really break through some egos and some spiritual misunderstandings if people, more people would try these things. And so that's just kind of a little side note here. Now, this was actually kind of a funny one from March 25th, which was actually yesterday. So it's a little bit out of order, but since it's on the screen now, actually, I think this may have actually happened on the 24th. But anyways, massive flocks of crows were flying through Tel Aviv, and this was being interpreted as a harbinger of doom, possibly even a sign of the apocalypse in the midst of this Iran conflict. And so the funny thing about this was the first few times I saw this video on Twitter, I was like, that's gotta be AI. I was like, not that many crows even live in the desert. And I told myself that at least twice when I saw these videos posted on Twitter. Then lo and behold, the next day there it was on Drudge Report with mainstream media articles talking about it. And so not that since it's mainstream articles, it means it's true. But if enough people recorded this and it does hit the mainstream news, this is one of those things where there's kind of enough eyewitnesses that we can assume this actually happened, and that they're writing actual articles about it. And so what I thought may have been AI ended up being real. And so that's an interesting, you have to always have your discernment on 100% these days. And so apparently, birds do migration patterns between Africa and the Middle East, and that, having this massive flock of crows is not a physical impossibility. And so it's also not necessarily a sign of, assured doom, but a little bit troublesome nonetheless. So, like I said, I went to bed Sunday night and it was saying that America had struck the energy infrastructure in Iran. I woke up Monday and that was essentially called off. Trump said, we will stop firing missiles at Iran temporarily because they've killed off so many layers of the leadership that they're finally working with some people and talking with some people that seem to be making progress in the negotiations to end this conflict. However, the Israeli government and Netanyahu replied on Monday that they won't stop attacking Iran, and this is our decision. This is the IDF's decision. So once again, this is looking like Israel is the aggressor. Israel is the one that doesn't want this to end, perhaps because the Iran conflict is their smokescreen for expanding their borders into Lebanon. But once again, the black pillars and the anti-MAGA influencers were saying that because of the difference between Trump's statement and Israel's statement, that it's once again looking like Bibi is treating Trump like his bitch, which I would disagree with that characterization. But I think that's the White Hat's intention, once again, is to show that this Israeli faction has had so much control in American politics, and they are reenacting that dynamic when it's not actually the case anymore, to raise awareness of it. It was also on Monday that OnlyFans founder Leo Radovinsky, Jewish, died of cancer at 43. And so he was remembered for being, at least in my opinion, the biggest pimp of all time and taking probably the biggest cut of his prostitutes' profits of all time. It's not the legacy you want to leave the world with. That's someone who, if hell exists, he will definitely be there. He will definitely be in attendance. Oh, like I said, Monday was also, Brian Johnson. Sorry, I couldn't remember his name. Brian Johnson is the longevity influencer he's a good one to follow, I would say, on social media, on X and Instagram, just because he's really on the cutting edge of so many different longevity remedies that it's always pretty interesting to see like what he's going to try next. And it was also on Monday that there was a massive fire, burn, and a loud explosion heard at the Valero oil refinery in Port Arthur, Texas. Now, there are, I guess, like you could say naturally, or just, there's regularly incidences in Texas and in the oil infrastructure. But, with everything going on in the Middle East, you have to wonder if this may have been some form of sabotage or terrorism. But of course, we have no word on that. And now I didn't save a picture because this is such like an odd side note, but one of these days this week was when Trump also visited Elvis's home. And I'm not sure exactly which state that was. If it was Texas or Tennessee. But Trump visited the home of Elvis, signed a guitar, and just throw all the fire on the speculation about if him and Elvis may have some kind of connection, like if they're the same person, if they're like a reincarnation. But there's some theories about Trump and Elvis, like the facial structure is similar. And like, so they seem to really be fueling the fire of conspiracy theories. And I'm not even sure if that's like a very credible one. But it's interesting that he took time, like in the middle of war, to go visit the home of Elvis and sign guitars. We have another interpretation here. Oh wait, this is actually a very recent one. So let's get to that maybe like last. But Trump, this was a tweet from Trump talking about the energy destruction pause. And so he's kind of been holding this theoretical plan to destroy Iran's energy infrastructure over their heads throughout the week, maintaining it as sort of like a background threat amid the ongoing diplomatic negotiations that are happening. But he put out this tweet. Now, the first delay was a 5-day delay of our bombardment of their power plants, and now he has extended it to 10, saying that as per the Iranian government request, please let this statement serve to represent that I am pushing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April 6th, 8 p.m. Eastern time. It's like the specific dates and times is just so crazy because it's like his whole thing, is always like, we're not going to reveal our strategies in advance. But like, I guess, with the truth tweet, diplomacy, warfare, it's whatever he's in the mood for. Talks are ongoing, and despite erroneous statements to the contrary by the fake news media and others, the talks are going very well. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So that is most of the news. Let's see here. On Wednesday, Melania did a presentation with a humanoid robot, which was the first time that a humanoid robot has been part of a press conference in the White House. So that was historic. And Melania talked about that we may use these robots in childhood education, which drew a mixed response. However, I would say that robot would do a better job than these libtard professors, especially a lot of the libtards that are running elementary schools and, teaching our youngest children in this country. I would sooner trust an optimist than some of them. I would sooner trust, I'm not saying like a Republican, but say, like a human that was nonpartisan above an optimist. But, there might be a little bit of a gap since the education industry is so predominantly dominated by liberals. Like this has been a very long-standing, most likely Jewish plot to fill our ranks of education with radical liberals. And so, the conservative voice and opinion is radically missing from much of our education system. from pre-kindergarten all the way through college in this country, and probably a lot of other countries as well. So on Thursday, today, the day of this video, actually it's Friday now. I got to this video kind of late, but thanks for everyone still watching at 1 a.m. on Rumble. We've got 31 watchers currently and only 2 comments. The comments are a little bit light tonight, but thanks for watching. So Thursday, it was announced, Thursday, March 26th, that President Trump's signature will be added to future U.S. paper currency, the Treasury Department announced. Trump will be the first sitting president whose name will appear on currency. It follows efforts to create 2 coins in his image on them, a $1 coin and a special 24-karat commemorative gold coin. I will definitely be trying to get that 24-karat gold coin. You have to save up, what, like $5,000 before then, I guess. Metals have actually been dropping significantly this week. You know, we're definitely not at all-time highs for silver or gold anymore, which is interesting. So hopefully you guys didn't buy in at the all-time high, but I do expect those to continue to go up throughout the year. So lastly in this video is the most recent news about the White House putting out cryptic tweets. And so there was 2 cryptic tweets from last night, and at least 3 more today, and they may have even done more cryptic tweets since I started this video. But in the ones they posted last night, there was first one that was essentially a black screen with a phone ding that you saw a very brief, like 1-frame glitch of an American flag. A second one where you saw a lady's feet and you heard like essentially like a hot mic saying it's launching soon, right? And then today they've been putting out images with no caption that are extremely pixelated images that are apparently members of the administration, like, you know, photos we've seen before. And it seems like a lot of these are photos, like that's J.D. Vance on his phone. This is one that has been deciphered already. They posted the one on the right where you see essentially a pixelated man with a purple tie. And the Anons and like the internet sleuths have deciphered this, that it is actually Marco Rubio on his phone at the State of the Union address. And so what does it mean? What does it mean? Nobody knows what it means, but the most recent one I actually included in the intro of this video was a pixelated image of the White House's logo on a video with a reversed audio saying exciting announcement tomorrow. So tomorrow is now today, now that it's 1 a.m. Friday. And so they're saying there will be an exciting announcement today. And the kind of the consistent theme between the pixelated images was it was all members of the administration on their iPhones. And I guess with like the glitching and the images of iPhones, maybe there's, you know, it could be suggestive of the EBS, you know, something maybe coming through our phones, a mass tweet or a mass EBS message maybe will be sent through our phones today. That would be quite the announcement, depending on what it says. So I have a couple other images to just round out this video. Again, coming back to like the highest level 40,000 foot interpretation of this Iran conflict, what's really going on. This was quite a long post from Natasha Montreal showing the history of Islamic expansion in the world. And, you know, reminding people that, you know, at a certain point, Islam was very much like a plague of the world spreading rapidly. It even Spain fell to Islam for roughly 700 years, I believe. And in many ways, the Crusades were what held Islam back from expanding into Europe, you know, keeping them locked there at the border of Turkey back when it was, what, like the Persian Empire or the whichever empire was based in Turkey. But this tweet, I'm just going to read the beginning of it because when you press show more, it was like extremely long, was saying the Crusades were not random wars of aggression. The Crusades were the Eastern Christian response to centuries of Islamic conquest. They were primarily defensive wars. In early Christianity, there were 5 centers of authority: Rome, Alexandria, Constantine, Antioch, and one other. And essentially what she was saying beyond the show more button there was that all of those other than Rome fell to Islam, and I believe are still Islamic cultural centers today. So, we're called New Templars here for a reason. We're not affiliated with the Templars, but, there does need to be like a conscious awareness of not just always turning the other cheek, as Jesus said, but actually of like defending your homeland, of defending your values. And here's one other image showing you exactly everything Iran was controlling. I'll zoom in here a little bit. But Iran was like the nexus point of all this Islamic terror, from Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, many of the Iraqi militias, the Shiite militias that caused chaos in Iraq, the whole second half of the Iraq war, and was financing was financing Bashar al-Assad in Syria as well. And of course, financing probably terror cells internationally as well, along with the CIA, but essentially saying, the Iran was working to destabilize the world for the 13 families and possibly extraterrestrial factions, which leads us to the final image here: make Christianity dangerous again. I'm not necessarily advocating for the eradication of Islam or like a full-on new crusade, but based on what's going on is one of the many reasons why I'm watching with interest and not necessarily protesting what many are considering like a war for Israel, because Christian Zionism, even in a way, predates Jewish Zionism. That was the whole idea of the Crusades, was to take back the Holy Land, create the kingdom of Jerusalem, safe for Christians. I believe that Christians would keep that area safe for all faiths. Like, look at America, that we have freedom of religion, not domination of one religion. And that's how I think it should be. And the very last image here, I found this meme that I just loved. It's essentially me. I mean, I'm not exactly in my 17th century garb yet, but from 2017, like, conspiracy theorists looked like the Psycho drawing lines on the inspiration board to 2027. Like, we've been right about everything. We're getting ready for our investments to finally pay off. We've already seen silver like doubling and tripling, and we've already seen XRP doubling and tripling, and then going back down, but I believe it's all coming together very soon. And last in the video here, a little bit of sad news that we've had actually 2 deaths in the truth community. One of them more of a public figure, which was Chella Smith, who was the host of Iraqi Dinar News on YouTube. She passed away from brain cancer last week, and I went with Jason Q to her funeral, and it was very sad. And they read Charlie Ward's message that he posted publicly about her there, and it was a really big turnout. And she left behind 3 of her own children and 3 children she was a stepmother to, and her husband. And so very sad. There won't probably be any more Iraqi Dinar News, but she has, I believe she's serving a higher purpose now that God has reassigned her, because she was a very strong warrior in the truth movement. Although I always wondered, how does someone decide to make Iraqi Dinar like their #1 subject to report on for every video? I would lose my mind if I had to just report on that. But she had a long life, well, 46 years, and many different careers rolled into one, from modeling I met her when she was the presenter at Charlie Ward's expo at 𝕯𝖃 and she had already had significant health challenges before that. And I remember when I met her actually in the airport gate coming back to Cincinnati, because she was from the area around Cincinnati, she said that she was just so happy that she had got her health recovered to the point where she could actually host that expo. And obviously hosting well, Charlie Ward was the host, but she was the MC. To MC an expo at 𝕯𝖃, I mean, that's the cherry on top of a good life, I would say. And so I'm really glad she got to realize that dream. But unfortunately, this cancer popped up out of nowhere. Well, I'm not sure like if it was completely out of nowhere or not, but it was very rapid decline. And so we went to that funeral on Saturday. And then just yesterday, another member of the Cincinnati Truth community, 𝕯𝖊𝖚𝖘 𝖁𝖚𝖑𝖙, passed away from bone cancer. And she also leaves behind, I think, 4 children. And so our thoughts are with her husband and her children. And her funeral has not been announced yet. She was not much of a public figure, but, definitely worth mentioning. And just kind of crazy that I've had 2 people I know die of cancer in the past 2 weeks. And that's on the heels of James Ring passing away last November. And so the war is real. It's not all bombs and oil refineries blowing up, but I'd say the real war is on our health, and cancer is becoming more and more of a common cause of death these days. And so I would say if you're not on a daily basis thinking about doing some mild cancer remedies, or at least avoiding carcinogens, it would be a good idea to start. That's what I'm gonna say. Like I take a mushroom powder every day that has multiple anti-cancer components, as well as a few other supplements. And I'm not doing like massive cancer remedies when I don't have cancer, but to just have essentially like a maintenance dose of anti-cancer remedies, I think is called for at this time. And, I even have concerns about, I've had, obviously the main concern these days is the vaccine. If you've had the vaccine of getting turbo cancer, I don't know for a fact the vaccine status of either Chella or 𝕯𝖊𝖚𝖘 𝖁𝖚𝖑𝖙, but based on what I know about them, I would assume that they were anti-vaxxers. Like that would be I would put money on that. But I have concerns about, have I picked up spike proteins along the way from, sharing fluids in whatever capacity, or even like have they expanded their vaccine, covert vaccine programs? Like have I eaten beef that's had vaccine, or, pork, and like who is now a possible subject of turbo cancer? Because like they could be putting this spike protein and mRNA and God knows what. And so better to be on top of it. In the case of Chella with the brain cancer, I would say definitely avoid AirPods, avoid holding your phone up to your ear. And I'm not sure if she did that or not, but sad news. But, the show must go on. They would have wanted us to win this battle. And so we're going to keep fighting for the truth and trying to understand what the Maestro is really up to. So one last time, check out dsmp.io. And that's it for this one. We'll see you on the next video. New Templars.
He could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world. as it exists today.
Welcome to the future of finance.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people.